from Interfaith Alliance, this is State of Belief Radio. I'm your host, Reverend Welton Gaddy. Last year on this show, I had the pleasure of speaking with Cathy Marino-Thomas, then head of Marriage Equality New York, during those suspenseful hours before that state's legislature finally passed its marriage equality law. Since then, Maryland's governor signed a similar law, and several states have made progress on this issue. There have also been aggressive, well-funded campaigns to roll back these fundamental family rights in several states, and in November, some voters will be called upon to cast a ballot potentially restricting the rights of their fellow Americans. Also, since then, Cathy Marino-Thomas has moved up to become co-president of the organization Marriage Equality USA, and I am delighted to have her back with us today on State of Belief Radio. Cathy, welcome.
Hi, thanks.
Would you summarize briefly the key battleground states where marriage equality is in play and kind of what's going on there?
There's a lot going on. We at Marriage Equality USA are focusing on 4 states in particular for this election season. We are focusing on Maryland that has their governor's support of marriage equality, but it has been placed on a referendum allowing the people to vote on the issue of whether or not to keep the law. Mm-hmm. We are focusing on Maine in the same position as Maryland. Maine's vote is actually the second go-round for their referendum, mm-hmm. And we, for the first time, as the LGBT community, has asked for that referendum, so that's very interesting. We believe that the voting was not above board last time, and we believe the votes in Maine are there for our equality. We are also focusing on Minnesota and Washington State in similar situations as Maryland.
When you say you're focusing, what kind of work are you doing in those states to get people ready for the vote?
Well, now that we have merged with our sister organization in California, we are a national group. We are working on phone banks across the country. We have a system that you can go either to a local phone banking center or you can phone bank from your computer at home to try and reach out to voters in those key states and explain to them the issue of marriage equality and why our families so badly need this civil right. We are also sending some foot soldiers, I like to call them, around to these states to do some good old-fashioned canvassing door-to-door on this issue.
Cathy, what is the 20 Million More campaign?
We need 20 million more votes, yes, for marriage equality to win marriage in those 4 key states that I've been discussing. Okay. The 20 Million More campaign reaches out to other organizations and gets them to sign on to working on these canvassing and phone banking opportunities. I'm happy to report that we have been very successful in signing on some of the bigger names in the LGBT advocacy world, such as HRC and Freedom to Marry. Here in New York, we have the Empire State Pride Agenda signing on, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. On our website, 20millionmore.org, there's a list of all of the organizations that have signed on to support this effort.
Good. And the website is 20millionmore.org.
Correct.
Wherever and whenever this issue comes up, any and all opposition to marriage equality always, it seems, always boils down to religious language. As a secular democracy, the rights of all of our citizens should simply not be defined by the religious beliefs of some of our citizens. Do you see the opposition as purely motivated by religion, or are there some other agendas at work?
Well, I think that our opposition's bottom line objections are 2 things. Religion, and as you've stated, has no place in a country where our Constitution is based on the separation of church and state, right, and their view that gay men and lesbians are not fit to be parents. Now, on the second issue, the data just does not support their view. There are varying estimates on the number of children that LGBTQ parents are raising, but the data is clear that these children are just as likely to be well-adjusted as the progeny of traditional unions. There's absolutely no data showing that children are harmed in any way by having parents of the same sex.
Imagine for a minute, Cathy, that I'm having a conversation with an opponent of marriage equality. What is the single most effective point that I can make, and how do I make it?
Well, what I usually say is the following. Our families, they exist. They exist with or without support of the law. Our love and commitment to one another also exists with or without support of the law. However, without support of the law, we are dependent on society to take care of us. In support of the law, we are free to take care of ourselves. So that is one place to go with your defense of marriage equality.
That's a good one, and it helps people understand how to respond when sometimes that knowledge is always right at the tip of their tongue.
Correct.
For many LGBT Americans in binational relationships, the state-by-state adoption of marriage equality really is a cruel joke. It's actually alarming how many progressive Americans seem to think that marrying a non-citizen same-sex partner now conveys some significant rights when in fact it does no such thing.
It actually harms them.
Yes. So how far off do you think federal changes are, and are you all working on reaching that goal also?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The good news is there are a few cases making their way through the system that have been presented to the Supreme Court. Two in particular are of high interest to me and to our organization. One is the Proposition 8 case, which I think anyone working on marriage equality is interested in. And the second is a case brought by a New York state widow, Edie Windsor, against the IRS. Either of these cases, both of these cases are supposed to be reviewed by the Supreme Court on September the 24th. If they decide they do not want to hear the Proposition 8 case, that's actually the way we would like them to go. If they don't hear the case, we will win the case in California, and marriages will resume. The problem with that is that it's centric to the state of California. Edie Windsor's case, however, was brought against the IRS when her partner of 44 years passed away, and Edie was presented with a tax bill of over $300,000. Edie is 84 years old, and she decided that she wanted the focus of the remainder of her life to be suing the IRS for the right to inherit tax-free from her wife of 44 years. She actually won her case and was given a judgment of $352,000 to be paid back to her. Of course, it was appealed, and it is now being presented to the Supreme Court. There again, if they refuse to hear the case, Edie will win her judgment. We will have then won with our state-level marriage license against the IRS, and that would be our first federal win. This would be a step in the right direction to challenging the Defense of Marriage Act at a federal level.
That is really encouraging news. I don't know about you, but for me, it's difficult to talk and hold your breath at the same time. But when the Supreme Court's mentioned, I hold my breath.
Me too.
Okay. Well, since we need to finish this interview, I guess we'll get our back to holding our breaths off the air.
Absolutely.
Cathy, what resources does Marriage Equality USA offer for friends and allies who'd like to be more effective advocates for fairness for all families?
There are various places on our website that you can put in your name and number and volunteer for various things. The 20 Million More campaign, our Speakers Bureau, getting just generally involved in the issue itself. Of course, if time is an issue for you, you can always donate money to help us do our work. Also available on our website, marriageequality.org. We have lots of work to do, and we have lots of jobs to give away. So just send our executive director, Brian Silva, an email and tell him that you're interested in working, and we will put you to work.
Cathy, it must have been wonderful to see marriage equality added to the Democratic National Convention's platform.
Oh, God, yes.
Earlier, the president's endorsement made global headlines. Just how important are such declarations of support?
Well, they're extremely important. First of all, President Obama is the first president to, sitting president, to actually come out in support of marriage equality, or just out for equality for all families, which is really the high-level important issue here. We want everyone in this country to be treated the same, and he has certainly worked hard to get this country back to its founding principles, and I applaud him for that. The contrast between the two contestants, let's call them, for the presidency is very, very wide. Obviously, I'm a Democrat, and obviously I'm a President Obama supporter. It gives everyone hope. It gives people the knowledge that up there in the world of people who can actually make changes, they get it.
I've been talking with Cathy Marino-Thomas, co-president of Marriage Equality USA. She's the former head of Marriage Equality New York, and we can only hope that the same level of success follows Cathy from the latter to the former. Cathy Marino-Thomas, thank you so much for joining us today on State of Belief Radio.
Thank you very much for having me.